Hello everyone, welcome to this very different session of RAMTP 2020, and I can say with confidence that this is going to be a session which everyone and people of almost all age groups, even if they might be younger than this particular age group, will enjoy and will learn from and will benefit from. And it's my you know it gives me a lot of happiness and joy to introduce Raghavendra. Raghavendra, I'll tell a short personal note about Raghavendra. We met about 7 years ago, right, Raghav? 7 years,
Yes, sir.
right? 7 years ago in a residential camp, and Raghav had come for the camp with his sister, and since then, we got hooked onto each other, and Raghav has been the first applicant of RAMTP, the first one. So his was the first application that we had received. And Raghavendra, I can keep talking. I can give a long introduction, but I don't want to eat into his time. Something very quick about him is that he loves numbers. He loves primes, and he started loving primes from a very young age, which he'll definitely talk about. He has given a wonderful TEDx talk when he was in 8th grade. So you guys can just look up on the internet on Raghavendra Bhatt. The spelling is as it appears in his video, Raghavendra Bhatt and TEDx, and you will find his amazing TEDx talk. Do that after this talk. And he's right now an undergrad student, first year undergrad student, doing a degree in mathematics in the University of Illinois, which Urbana, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, University of Illinois Urbana, and it is what time? 3:30.
Yes.
It's 3:30 in the morning in US, and he's doing this session for you guys. So let's welcome Raghavendra to this particular session. Thank you, Raghavendra. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. First of all, I am really glad, and I'm very touched by the fact that Vinay sir, Hariharan sir, Mandar sir, all of them have given me this opportunity. And I was in Mumbai for the last RAMTP, and at that time I didn't really know that 1 year later I'll be here, or that I'll be giving a talk or on this topic. So a lot of things have happened in the last 1 year, and it's been a wonderful time here, and I've been learning a lot of things. So before we get into this session, as sir said, it will be a little bit different from some of the other sessions that you've probably had so far in this program. As I said, I would have loved to attend almost all of them, but I had exams until like 4 hours back. I just finished all my final exams just now, few hours back. So this will be not as theoretical and as probably as rigorous as some of the other sessions, although I assure you that you'll learn a lot of things and you'll have a great time, but you might not have to do a lot of writing. It's more of listening and thinking. So this session is going to be based on game of primes, and as the name suggests, it's a game which is to do with prime numbers, and this was something that I came up with just about 3 months back. So it happened in this very semester in this very university, and I was sitting in a class, and I was sitting in an analytic number theory class, and somehow out of the blue this idea came, and ever since then I've discussed it with some of my friends from RAMTP. So we meet once in a week and we discuss some of the things, but most of the people in the session will probably be new to this topic. I want to genuinely thank two people. One is my professor here. His name is Alexandru Zaharescu. He is one of the finest mathematical minds that I've ever come across, and he's also one of the greatest teachers that I've ever had. So he's my mentor currently, and he's guiding me on this particular research project. And I also want to thank my father, because he's also been an integral part of this. He also designed an interface which I will show you guys soon, to make it look very attractive and to actually show you what this game is all about. But I want to take you back to a very special moment that I had in 2017, when I had come to this very university in that trip. So I had visited the same university and I had met a few mathematicians. But after that, I had met a very special person called John Conway, who is one of the greatest mathematicians of the 20th and 21st century. And I happened to meet him. Actually, I ran into him in Princeton University. Some of you might be knowing, he was a faculty there. he created something which revolutionized computer science in the 70s and 80s, and it is called the game of life. And I will briefly explain what that is because it's relevant to what I'm going to talk about. But I had about one hour or 1.5 hours worth of conversation with him, sitting in Fine Hall, which is the Department of Mathematics at Princeton. And in that 1 hour, basically, I kind of made up my mind that I want to pursue a degree in mathematics. I made up my mind that I want to do at least some sort of postgraduate research in mathematics. And I also made up my mind that I want to come up with something new. So that was the impact that conversation had on me. And at that time, I didn't know about all these things, but I got to know that very recently, because in February, when I first came up with the game of primes and I correlated it with the game of life, I remembered that, oh, so game of life is actually John Conway's, and I had met him long back. And very sadly, he passed away just almost a month back. He has not been well for a long time. And I also found out that when I met him, it was the last few months of his life where he was active, because after that he was not well and he didn't even visit the campus for quite some time. So I consider this as my tribute to him, because I think without him I would not have come up with this idea. If he had not invented the game of life, it's unlikely that many of the cellular automatas that are existing currently would be there. And if I had not met him there, I don't know if I ever would have decided to be a math major or something like that, because I had to, I went through a lot in my high school in India, and a lot of things happened, but finally everything has fallen into place and everything is working well now. So remembering him, I want to start this talk. So before we get into the game of primes, I'll quickly tell you what the game of life is, although I'm very sure all of you are very intelligent people and most of you know what it is all about. But I'll share my screen and I'll explain this with just 3 sentences and one picture that I have here. So I hope this is clearly visible to all of you. So the game of life is not exactly similar to the board game of life that most of you would have seen, because if you go to Google and search game of life, that's the first thing that pops up. But if you search game of life mathematics, this is something that you will see. So it is a cellular automata, and most of you know what that is, but I'll tell you what are the rules of this particular design. So it's basically a probabilistic, some sort of algorithm based game. And the beauty of this game is that you just have to start the game, and then you don't have to do anything else. The game will play itself, basically, if at all that makes any sense. And you just watch, you're an observer, and you can learn a lot of things. That can be many things that you can interpret from this. And a lot of things have been, a lot of revolutions in computer science and mathematics have been derived from this particular game. So this is the grid. So you can see this picture here. There's a grid. It has squares, and you can quickly see that there are some black squares and there are some white squares. And this is just an example grid. And what exactly happens in this particular grid is very similar to what happens in our Earth, in the human life. So that the game of life is just a mathematical representation of our universe. So it has a very strong philosophical significance as well, in addition to being a great mathematical and computer science idea. And that is what made me like it very much, because I like to correlate the things that I learn in math with what happens in the universe, because I feel that math is the language which runs the universe, and you can explain most of the complicated secrets of the universe based on some of the most basic equations in math and physics. I'm pretty sure there will be a lot more of that in the next session, Professor Sham, and they'll have a discussion on that. But coming to the game of life, so in the world there are a few basic principles based on which life flourishes. First of all, in a city or in a village or in a house, you cannot have too many people, because then there will be problem with resources. The genes have to spread, there has to be reproduction, and the human race has to continue and flourish. And also there has to be constant supply of companionship, food, water, etc., the basic resources which decide how life runs. So in the game of life, how it is designed is, you imagine each of these dots that you see here in this picture, a black dot, you imagine that as a person. That is something that has a being and it has a life. And just like human beings, there are just 2 things possible: you can either be dead or you can be alive. There's nothing in between, speaking very broadly. So same for this dot. It can be black or it can be white. So when it is alive, it's going to be black, and when it is not alive, it's going to be white. So some of the empty boxes there is nothing there, and the black dots that you see, these are alive dots. So what happens is, for a dot, for a cell, let us say, to survive, there are a few basic conditions, and those are the three principles. Any live cell with 2 or 3 live neighbors will survive. So for example, you are a black dot and you have 2 or 3 surrounding black dots. So what do you mean by surrounding? You can think of it as a chessboard, and each box, each square can have 8 squares around it, right? So there's one up, right, left, down, and there is northwest, southwest, northeast, and southeast. So you can have 8 neighbors, and out of those 8, if there are 2 or 3 neighbors which are alive, then you survive. Any dead cell which has 3 live neighbors becomes a live cell. So this is the concept of reproduction. If there are 3 people in a civilization, and they're surrounding an empty place, then there will be a new individual born over there. And the last rule is that all other live cells die in the next generation. Similarly, all other dead cells stay dead. So now this is some rule that is particular to one type of game of life, but there are variations to it. So we don't have to get into the intricacies of that. You can have different cellular automata based on different principles. So at this point of time, I will stop the screen share, and then I will start it once again when I have to show you my game of primes. So this is the basic principle. So that's all you need to know as of now. You just have to know that there are some rules which will decide what is alive, what is dead, how it can be alive, how it can be dead, and there are a few subtle things here and there. So as you might have noticed, this doesn't seem to have anything to do with mathematics as of now, because you don't seem to see any numbers. It's more of patterns. It's genuinely that it's to do with patterns, but you don't really see any numbers. So I wanted to see how this particular idea can be used to study patterns in numbers and prime numbers. So now coming to prime numbers, for the last 5 years of my life, so starting 2015 January, that was the first time in my life where I came up with a few prime number conjectures on my own. So a conjecture is a statement in mathematics that is yet to be proved or disproved, but seems to be correct. So some of you might be knowing some extremely famous conjectures like the Goldbach conjecture, and the Poincare conjecture, then the Collatz conjecture, the twin prime conjecture. These are all very famous statements in mathematics which many people use in their works, and they refer to these things in their papers, but they're not yet proved. But they're not yet disproved, so it's a very grayish sort of area there between the true and false. But the great thing about these conjectures, why they are lasting, for example, the Goldbach conjecture has been there since the 1760s or something, because nobody has found a counter example. And for those of you who don't know it, the Goldbach conjecture says that any even number is a sum of 2 prime numbers. So like, for example, 6 is 3 plus 3, 10 is 7 plus 3, and 100 is 89 plus 11, and so on, right? So you can try it. Every even number is going to be a sum of 2 primes, but nobody has proved it. And the more interesting part is nobody has disproved it. So there is no even number all the way up to 10 to the power 17 or 10 to the power 18 which fails this conjecture. That is why it is very powerful. So I came up with a few conjectures of my own. I tried to come up with things that were similar to something like Goldbach's conjecture, or along those lines, and I came up with a few patterns. And I wrote a few programs to test them and see if they're working. So I had a very, very good start to my journey in research, because I think to do research, the first thing is you should not be afraid of being wrong, and the second thing is you should be creative. So these are the two most important things. Everything else can come secondary, but the first thing is you should not be afraid of being wrong, because most research, for example, Andrew Wiles, he spent last theorem. If at all he was afraid of being wrong, he would not have given such a long time of his life. So you should not be afraid of being wrong, and you have to be creative. So the more time you spend with numbers and the more patterns you see, you start getting ideas. So that is how my journey began. And from then on, I came up with a few more conjectures. And last semester, I was in a different university. In the last semester, I was in Ohio, in Wright State University. I came up with a few more types of numbers that had to do something with primes, but were not exactly primes, and things were going on, right? So, but nothing that I discovered, I felt, was something totally new. They were all based on ideas that were, people were familiar with, and I didn't really see what this could mean to the general public, or how anybody could be drawn towards liking mathematics. But this semester, because I was sitting in Professor Kevin Ford's class, so Kevin Ford is one of the greatest mathematicians of our university, and he was teaching this course in number theory, and I was just drawing some squares um, on a piece of paper, and I remembered the game of life, and I thought, how can the principle of game of life be used to explain prime numbers? I said, can prime numbers be somehow be linked here? Because even my philosophy professor agrees that prime numbers are some of the biggest mysteries of the universe. He's not a mathematician, but he knows a lot of math, and he's a philosopher, and he feels that prime numbers are a big mystery. So I felt there should be some way that this game can be used to understand prime numbers. And then it hit me. Instead of filling this grid with black and white dots, why don't we fill them with numbers? We have all seen Snake and Ladder. We play these different type of games. We have number line where we learn our first addition and subtraction, and we teach a child how to count based on, all these things happen. And there is this beautiful square or a rectangle which has many partitions, and each of them, instead of leaving them empty, why don't you fill them with numbers? And I thought, okay, that could be a new idea. And what do we do out of it? How, if I just fill it with numbers, let's say you have a board of Snake and Ladder, right? You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you go all the way up to 100. How is that going to be linked to the game of life? And how is it going to be linked to prime numbers? So before I reveal this, I want to ask you guys if any of you has any suggestion, and then I will show you what exactly I have come up with. But before that, somebody who has not heard of this before, I know that there are at least 10 people in this session who have heard about this in some of my previous classes. But is there anybody else who wants to take a shot? Just throw something in the dark and see if you can come up with something. I'll give you 5 minutes to think about it. There's a board, there's a grid of numbers, and you want to somehow link it with prime numbers and with the game of life. Does anybody have any suggestion? If so, you can write in the chat.
Can I unmute those who have raised hands?
Sure. So I think Imran wants to say something. So let's hear him.
Yes, Imran.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Imran.
Yes. So I think that prime numbers will live. Like are surrounding them, they will be prime numbers.
Okay. Can you explain that a little more so that everybody understands? Can you say the same thing again?
No, like prime numbers are living numbers. Like you will have two prime numbers surrounding them. Like in the game of life, you have you need two numbers surrounding them. So in like 2 or 3 numbers, like the 8 positions, then it will be that cell will live. So when you take a prime number like that in the 8 positions, there will be 2 or 3 prime numbers. Is it correct?
That's incredible, and I'm amazed at the fact that you could understand that so quickly, and that's more or less what's happening. But before I get into that, a sincere request to all of you, please keep your chats for a little bit later, and if you genuinely have any questions, you can type it there. Please do not tell others that we know this, we don't know this is trivial and all of that. I mean, all of them are here to learn, so some of the things you might know, others might not know. That's fine. So let's keep the chat box reserved only for questions. Okay. So Imran is totally right, and now I will show you the actual game of primes, and this is the interface. And now we are going to understand. I'm not going to show you any rules written down because I want you to visualize it and understand it. I don't want you to read it. So listen to me very carefully, and I will demonstrate this using a simple 3x3 grid to start with. And as you can see, this is now a 5x5 grid, but I can go here and I can make it a 3x3 grid. Okay, so now I hope all the numbers are visible. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If it is not visible, please type in the chat not visible. Otherwise, you can just be silent. So if you don't say anything, I will assume that it's clearly visible.
Visible. You can just ask me. I'll unmute myself and say so that people don't spam.
Thank you, sir. So the first question that anybody can ask me at this stage is, why are they filled like this? Why don't I go anti-clockwise or clockwise? Or so all of those things we can talk about them later, but just assume that this is the rule and you have this grid and you fill the numbers like this. So here are the simple rules. If a number is surrounded by 3 or more prime numbers, it gets excited. So now in the game of life, there is living and dying, and I don't want to do living and dying. So I'm just saying excited and dormant, right? An excited state will be excited, a dormant state will be dormant. Simple. So if there is a dormant state, meaning so there is this one number which is not yet excited, so it is white. So actually I can just give you a sneak peek. If it is excited, it will look red. Okay. So currently all of them are asleep. They're all dormant. They're all white. If a dormant number is surrounded by 3 or more prime numbers or other excited states, then it gets excited. Listen to me very carefully. If there is a dormant number and it is surrounded by 3 or more primes or excited states, you might ask me, but there are no excited states now. But as we go into the game, there will come a point of time where there will be other excited states which will be interacting with the other dormant states. So imagine that there is one dormant fellow who is surrounded by some prime numbers and some other excited states, right? The prime number could be excited or dormant, that doesn't matter. Just think for now that a dormant fellow is surrounded by some primes or excited states. If the total count of his neighbors who are either primes or excited is 3 or more than 3, he gets excited, right? So he turns red. That is the rule of life. So how you get life? How do you die? That is, how do you become dormant? Well, if you are excited currently, but you have more than 3 neighbors who are excited, that is 4 or more. Remember, to get life, that is to become excited, you need 3 or more. But to die or become dormant, you need 4 or more. Then you go back to becoming dormant. So initially you are dormant. Let's say you have some interesting neighbors around you, so you become excited. But then again, if there are too many neighbors around you who are excited, you go back to becoming dormant. So that is all that is required as of now. And we will see, before I show you what will happen, let us try to guess what will happen. So which are the prime numbers here? 2 is a prime, 3 is a prime, 5 is a prime, 7 is a prime. So we have 4 prime numbers.
Yes, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Can you explain the rules a little slowly, just once again, so that everybody is clear?
Sure.
Just once again.
Yes. So now there is this number 1. Okay. It has 3 neighbors around it. It is 2, 5, and 6. Out of them, 2 of them are primes. So there are 2 prime numbers which are its neighbors, but that doesn't really change anything, because for a dormant number to get excited, we need at least 3 neighbors who are primes. At this point of time, let's only think primes and composites. Let's worry about excited states later if that will confuse you. At this stage, we don't have to worry about excited. Everybody is dormant. And let us just look at a number and see if it is surrounded by 3 or more primes. Can somebody find a number in this box which is surrounded by 3 or more primes? Good. Somebody said 4. 4 is surrounded by 3, 2, and 5. Somebody said 6. Very good. 6 is surrounded by 2, 5, and 7. And somebody said 5. 5 is also surrounded by 7, 2, and 3. So stop. Thank you for all your messages. So as of now, there are 3 guys, that is 4, 5, and 6, who are surrounded by 3 or more primes. So when I press next, that is, we go to the next day. Imagine that each situation is a day. So on a given day, we have these many people who are dormant. Then we go to the next day. So when I go to the next day, I have 4 who is excited, 5 who is excited, and 6 who is excited, because these guys had prime numbers around them, right? Whereas a number like 2 did not get excited because its neighbors were 1, 6, 5, 4, and 3. 1 is not a prime number. 3 is a prime. 5 is a prime. Only 2 potential neighbors who could, be useful, but that's not enough. We need 3 or more. So that's why 1, 2, and 3, and 7, 8, and 9 are all sleeping, and 6, 5, and 4 have gotten up because they were surrounded by primes. Okay. Now that we have gone one state into the game, one day into the game, now what happens is, not only should we look at primes, we should also look at neighbors who are excited. Because if you recollect, the rule that I said was, if a dormant number is surrounded by 3 or more primes or excited states, then it gets excited. So the neighbors need not be only prime, they could also be other excited states. Like for example, now the number 2 has 3 neighbors who are all excited. 6 is not a prime number, but it is excited. So the moment a number becomes excited, we don't really care whether it's a prime or a composite. It can be used to give life to the other guys around it. So the number 1 is now surrounded by 2, 5 and 6. Out of this, 1 is a prime, that is 2. And there are 2 numbers that are excited, that is 5 and 6. Now 5 is also a prime, but we will not worry about that. So 1 has 3 neighbors that can give it life, and that's all that is required. The number 2 has 3 neighbors that are excited. That's good enough. It actually has 4 neighbors that are, because there is a prime number and there are 3 excited states. Same for the number 3. Same for the number 7. No, because it only has 2 excited states as its neighbors, and the third one is a composite number and it is dormant. Right? Okay. So we have understood that in the next state, 1, 2 and 3 should get excited because they have neighbors that are interesting. Let's call them interesting numbers. Okay, it's a very extremely abstract term, but let's just assume that we call these excited or prime numbers as interesting. But you might remember from the game of life that life is not all that happens. There is also death that happens. That is, a living cell will die if it is surrounded by too many. And in this case, an excited state will go back to becoming dormant if it has more than 4 or more than 4 neighbors who are primes or excited. Look at the number 5. 5 has got 2 neighbors that are excited, that is 6 and 4. And it has 3 neighbors in addition to this that are primes, that is 2, 3 and 7. So it's technically surrounded by 5 interesting people, and that's too much. So 5 has to go back to becoming dormant. It cannot stay excited. Let's look at 4. 4 is excited and it is surrounded by 1 prime, 2 primes and a third which is an excited. So the total count is 3, which is fine. So 4 will stay alive. Let's look at 6. 1 excited, 1 prime and another prime. Total 3. No problem. It will die only if it is 4 or more than 4. So the only guy who is alive and will die is 5. And the people who will get life are 1, 2 and 3. Let's go to the next state. Oh, 8 got life. What? How did 8 get life? Was 8 also surrounded by neighbors that were exciting? Because 8 was here. Let's go back to the previous state. 8 was here. 8 had 3 neighbors that are all excited, and it also has a prime. So there are 1, 2, 3 and 8 that will get life. 4 and 6 will remain the way they are, and 5 will die. So this is what happens in the next day. Okay. Now what happens? It's a little complicated now for us to check everything, but we can quickly say that 5 will get life. Because to get life, you just need 3 neighbors, and 5 is in the center of the action, and it has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 neighbors. 7 actually, because there are 6 neighbors that are excited and there is a prime number. So 5 will definitely get life. Is there any number which will go back to becoming dormant? Yes, the number 2 has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 neighbors that are primes or excited. It has to go back to becoming dormant. So let's do the next stage. This is what happens. And now if I go to the next state, this is what happens. I'm going to go a little bit faster now. We'll not stop it every day and try to predict what should happen. But what will happen is this. I will start again. We started this. We did this. We did this. We did this. And now we are in this. We are in a situation where there are only 2 possible states, either this pattern or this pattern, and it just keeps going on forever. There's no other day possible. And you might also notice that 1, 3, 9 and 7, never die and they're always alive. That is because in this particular grid, because they're in the corner, they will always have only 3 neighbors maximum. So they can never die due to overpopulation. And there is at least one prime there because 5 is a prime. So these guys will never die. It's a very, very good situation for them to be, because 1, 3, 9, and 7 will never die. There is one more rule which I did not tell because I didn't want it to be confusing, but I think I can talk about it now. Suppose there is this cell which is excited, and somehow imagine that it has 8 neighbors and none of those guys are excited and none of those guys are prime. It's very difficult for you to imagine in this particular grid, but when I show you larger grids, you will see that happening. But the situation can happen where there is this one excited state, but none of its neighbors are interesting. There is no prime, there is no excited state. And when that happens, it dies due to loneliness. So for a cell to keep surviving and for a number to be excited, it needs companionship. It needs some people around it, at least one guy. Among all its 8 neighbors, there should be at least one prime somewhere, or one excited state somewhere. So that is a loneliness type of situation where you have no one around you and you have to go back to sleep. Okay, let's watch what happens if it's a 5x5 grid. And this is where interesting things start happening. So in the 3x3, after 3 steps, we reached a stalemate where nothing was changing. It's just going to and fro. Let's see what happens to the 5x5. We start with everything being dormant. And these are the first set of numbers that get excited. And then some of them die. And then some of them come back to life. And this pattern goes on like this. And let us see if we will ever reach a cycle or a stalemate or a situation where we have seen a pattern. Okay, remember this day, everybody. Don't forget it. Everyone is excited except 23. So if this day comes again, you will know that we have reached a cycle. I will quickly tell you why. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And there. Let's do it again and see if we go back and reach the same guy again. Everyone is excited except for 23. There you go. It's very simple to understand why, if a same state is repeating, then there is a cycle. I'll tell you why. Because the rules are going to be the same for every day. I mean, the rules are the same. How to die, how to come to life, loneliness, all the things remain. So if at all you reach a situation where you have earlier been in that same, this exact same elements which are excited and the exact same elements which are dormant, if you read that same situation again, then the next day is also going to be the same, because the rules will remain the same. So it is a guarantee that you will reach a cycle. Here's my question. Can you tell me if or why it is so that no matter what the grid, there will always be a situation where you reach a day which you have seen before at some point of time? Or can there be a situation where you never reach the same thing and you're just going on and on and on in patterns? Let's think about this.
Do you want to take their questions on chat, or do you want them to raise hands?
No, they're just going to think about it. I am getting a few answers here, so I will address that. But at this point of time, if you don't get the answer, refrain from looking at the chat, and you can just ponder over it and think. Okay, we saw this situation where we started off with this. Don't think too much about the rules and whatever I told you. Let's say you don't remember all of them, but just think that there is some pattern going on. And I'm telling you that no matter what the grid is, you will eventually reach the same situation again. Okay, I'm getting a lot of interesting answers actually. So the one thing that most people have noticed already is that there are only a finite number of patterns possible. See, think about this. This is simple permutations and combinations. Each box or each cell or each number can only have two possible states. Either it's excited or it's dormant, right? Forget about prime or composite. It's either red or white. Let's just think about it that way. And we can code this in some sort of a binary system, right? We say that if it's red, it's a 1. If it's white, it's a 0. So let's say this particular day stands for the number 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1, whatever. There's 1 0 and there's 1 1. This day stands for the number 1 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 0 0, everything 0, and the last row there is 1 0 1 0 1. I just code it and I store it in some sort of bitwise patterns. The total number of patterns possible is going to be 2 to the power the number of cells. So if this particular box has got 25 cells in it, and each of them has only 2 possibilities, the total ways in which you can make things happen is just going to be 2 times 2 times 2, that's 2 to the power. It's like you have 25 different clothes, types of clothes to pick from, and each of them has 2 varieties. How many different dresses can you wear? It's just 2 times everything, right? The basic problem, counting problem. So the number of combinations in this particular situation is just going to be 2 to the power 25. And that's finite. Although it's extremely large, it's still finite. So you cannot have an infinite number of patterns going on and on till the end of the universe, because at some point of time, because there are only 2 to the power 25 total patterns, you will touch upon a pattern that you have already touched upon earlier. And the moment you do that, from then on, everything will repeat. But the question is, when will that pattern happen? And once that pattern happens, how long do you have to wait to see that same pattern again? That is the problem. It's not as to whether a pattern will happen. It will happen. But can you predict when it will happen? Let's say I do a 7 by 7. Okay. And let's say I'm going to run this fast now because I want to quickly get to the pattern. Okay, fine. So now I've reached the pattern. I'll pause and I will play. So now we are inside the pattern. So whatever you see will keep repeating. Let's say if you notice it. So I'm going to start from here. Remember this picture, everybody. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Again, we are inside a pattern. So whatever we do, we will keep going over these same 8 different elements. It'll just keep going there. But we did not start off here. Remember, we started off from here, and after a point of time, we reached there. If you look at the right side of the screen, you will see a cycle start, a cycle end, and a cycle state. Right? And here it is telling if we are inside a cycle or not. So a cycle is where the same set of patterns will keep repeating. Let me make the grid a little larger. And now forget the math part just for a minute and just observe, just look at these patterns. They look so beautiful. Forget about numbers and primes. Just look at these. These look like beautiful drawings, and there's some sort of a, there's a beauty about them. Just watch. Just look at this. It looks like some LED bulbs flashing, but they're all happening because of the patterns in prime numbers and these few rules. Okay, so now we have reached a situation. So you can see here, it says cycle start 621, cycle end 628, which means for the first 621 states, we didn't have any repetition. On the 622nd state, we reached a situation which we had earlier seen. And from then on, there are 6 states which will keep repeating. So this is, now we are inside a pattern, and the same 6 things keep going on and on and on. So now you might ask, well, for the 3 by 3, I was able to reach a cycle in just about 3 steps. But for the 10 by 10, I have to wait 600 steps. 600 steps. It's not even possible to draw this and wait, right? You have to have a computer program or something to look at it, because you cannot draw this 100 boxes and keep calculating everything. It takes a lot of time. And somebody is saying that it's directly proportional to the size of the grid. Well, it's not that easy. I thought so too initially, but that's unfortunately, just like most of the other things in prime numbers, it's not as trivial as it looks like. Things can be a little different. But at this point of time, I want to introduce you guys to the second part of the game of primes, which is music. That is why I wanted to talk about cycles. Uh, even so, from the age of 3 or 4, I have always been a huge fan of music because I come from a family where my mother, my father, my uncle, my grandmother, everybody is a huge connoisseur of Indian classical music, especially. And I've also grown to admire some of the compositions of people like Mozart and Paganini and all these guys. But the one thing that I always loved about music is that it allowed me to explore different patterns. So some of you who know music will realize that any song is set to a particular rhythm, and throughout the song you're not allowed to go too much away from it. Like the entire song will have that same rhythmic cycle to it. So when I was really young, I would try to arrange notes in a different way such that they sound different, but they should all have the same beat. They should have the same rhythm. And I tried to do this on the tabla, which is an Indian percussion instrument. I'm sure most of you know it. And then on the violin. So violin was a very recently, meaning I think I was in 7th or 8th grade when I started exploring violin. But I've always tried to link combinatorics and some pattern recognitions with music, because I always felt that music has a lot of hidden patterns in it. Also, some of you who are this one particular minute is only for those guys who are extremely interested in music and who are practicing it. In Hindustani classical music, there comes a point of time where the composer, where the singer, actually the artist, gets into a on the spur of the moment sort of composing mood. That happens towards the end of the composition, where he just goes on composing on the spot. This is nothing to do with the song, right? He just gets inspired by the audience and he just goes on doing. The amazing thing is, it will still sound good, and at any point of time you stop him, there is rhythm. It's not that he's just randomly singing something. So musicians, after a lot of practice, I haven't reached that level yet, but I'm beginning to see that it can happen soon. But I know people who can completely do this. They reach a point of time where even by mistake they cannot miss the rhythm, because their brain is moving in that same cycle. So 1 2 3 4 5 6, 1 2 3 4, the brain is doing it subconsciously, and whatever compositions they do are falling in sync with it. So there is rhythm, there is pattern recognition, and the calculations are all happening. So after about 2 weeks of doing Game of Primes, I felt, okay, so there are interesting cycles that happen. There are different lengths for the cycles, but they are very difficult to locate. Like, for example, now I show you this cycle here, which is going on. Unless you have photographs, it's very difficult for you to realize when a cycle has happened. I mean, you cannot really remember this, can you? Unless you have some photographic memory, like the guys who memorize 1,000 digits of pi. But you cannot really remember which are the states excited. And this is not even some symmetric pattern for you to remember. It's just like some ink blot and there is something happening. So I felt a good way to remember these things would be to code them musically. So there is an option here which is music off. So I've kept it off purposefully. I didn't want you guys to think what sort of Morse code is happening, but I'll quickly introduce you to that. There are 7 notes in music, that is sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, and do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. That's in the Western scale. There are 7 fundamental notes, and the same notes keep repeating. So when you do sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, that next sa is actually the same sa, but played at a higher frequency. So they both actually sound the same if you play them together. It is just that one is at a higher pitch and one is at a lower pitch. It's just the frequency that's different there. So here, we have so many numbers. We cannot just code them based on 7 different notes. So what do? I thought we can do it modulo 7. So you count the number of excited states, right? So right now there are 63 boxes which are red. So you just count it and you do modulo 7. If there is a multiple of 7, then it is sa. If it is 1 modulo 7, let's say there are 8 excited numbers, or let's say there are 701 excited numbers, that is going to be 1 note, and everything. So you can distribute all the numbers into these equivalence classes modulo 7. You'll get 7 of them and you'll get 7 notes. So now let's see how this will sound like. I'm going to turn on the music. Please listen carefully. And this is the Game of Primes musical edition. Was that too loud? Let me make it slightly less. Okay. If you feel that it's a little boring, I know it's not boring, but let's say some exceptionally talented musicians get bored with this. You don't have to do modulo 7. You can do modulo 21 because we can go 3 different octaves. I start from sarigama padani sa, then I go to the next higher sarigama padani, then I go to the higher one. So when I do it in 3 different octaves, this is how it sounds like.
Can you increase the sound, please?
Oh, I should increase it. Oh, sure. I thought it's too loud. So I'm going to play it in auto mode so that you can hear the music. I'm not going to click it one by one, but I'll play it in auto mode. Pay attention to the low frequency and the high frequency because now we are operating at 3 different octaves. So we have 21 different notes to play with. Sorry. So now we will go to the cycle when we go to the situation where the same thing is repeating. So I'm going to play this fast forward without the music so that we reach the cycle. Okay, now we have reached the cycle. Now I play the music. So what will happen? The same tune will keep repeating. And now you know, oh, okay, we are in a cycle. See what happens. So you know you're in a cycle. You don't have to look at the combination of numbers and remember. You can just listen and you know you have reached a cycle. I know that technically it could still sound the same somewhere else because of the modulus distribution, and you might not actually be in the cycle, but you are in the same patterns of modulo 7. That's a very low probability event. So we can kind of say that most of the time, if the same tune is repeating again and again, you are most likely in a cycle, right? So now we go to a lot bigger grid and we'll have some fun. We go to a 50 by 50 grid. So you'll not even be able to see the numbers, right? You just listen music and you just see patterns. The amazing thing though is that each time you change the grid, the music is sounding different for some reason. And the even more interesting thing is that the music is sounding nice. Now, if you have a keyboard at home and you tell a cat to run over the keyboard, and let's say the cat is only running on the white notes, right? Let's say the cat doesn't touch the black notes. Do you know that the white notes on the keyboard are actually set to the fundamental notes? You can just start playing from the lowest white note and keep going. It will sound good, right? But if you tell a cat to run over it, it will not sound good because there is some disorderness. It doesn't sound really interesting to the ears. There is some pattern of notes that will sound good. That's why even on a violin, if I'm just randomly playing some notes, it will sound as if it's an ambulance, or it will sound like some child is crying. It doesn't really sound, I mean, child crying is still music to its parents, but it doesn't really sound like a song. But for some reason here, any grid I pick, any octave, it is still sounding good, which means there is some correlation between the states. They're not happening randomly. Let's listen to this. Yes. So this can be used to compose music. I mean, there's a lack of creativity in terms of the musician's involvement because some machine is doing it for you and some numbers are behaving. But don't you guys feel it's incredible that this numbers, which we all feel is only related to, you know, whatever concepts in mathematics, just the way they behave, and we just apply some simple rules like, you know, modulo 7 or these trivial things, but that is able to generate music, which means these things are all correlated. I would have loved to continue for a long time, but I will wind up in about 3 or 4 minutes from now. And I know this music is very interesting, and actually this is being made into an app. Actually, I do have the unofficial version with me currently, and it can be accessed from the browser. But I think about a month from now, it should be accessible to all of you, and you can all play with it. And before I finish, I want to share with you some of my conjectures on this particular game, and that is what I'm currently doing research on. Because I know the music is interesting and all of that, but you know, to have some sort of a result in mathematics, you need some sort of a mathematical result. So I'll quickly tell you some of my inferences so far that I've noticed. So the first thing is that every cycle you pick any grid that you want, you arrange them in whichever way you want. So I didn't tell you about that, but I can increment. The increment can be different. Like for example, I don't have to just fill them with natural numbers. I can just fill them with odd numbers. Like for example, if I change the increment here, now it's going to be 1 3 5 7 9 11 if you look at the numbers, and this gives a higher chance of finding primes. So the game will be different. You will have more excited states very quickly because now I have so many prime numbers here. There are no even numbers, right? All of them are odd. I can also fill them 1, 7, 13, etc. That gives me an even higher chance of prime numbers, or I can fill them 1, 31, 61, etc. So there are different ways to do it. But the one thing I've noticed is that every time there is a cycle, the length of the cycle is always even, which means if I count the number of states in the cycle, so cycle is defined as the first time I reach a situation where I see a state which I've already seen before. From that point on, the amount of states required to come back to it is always even length. The cycle is always going to be even length. It's going to be 10 or 20 or 12 or 14 or whatever. So it's always going to be even length. That's one conjecture that's I think it's interesting. The other thing is that the music is always going to be unique to that particular grid. So basically grid based on how you fill the numbers. But if I go from a 3x3 to a 4x4, or then I go to a 5x5, each time I go to a different grid, I hear some different kinds of music. And then there are a few other conjectures of mine based on some conjectures in number theory. So I'll talk about only one of them because I think it's easy to understand. So recently, I mean, I did not come up with this. It's a well-known conjecture, but I just noticed it recently that, let's say I pick a sequence of numbers, right? And I look at the prime gaps. Like for example, I pick the number 6 and I say that there is a prime 1 greater than 6. So there's 1, that is 7. Then if I add 5 to 6, I get 11. Then if I add 7 to 6, I get 13. And then if I add 11 to 6, I get 17. So let's say for the number 6, I have prime numbers 1 away, 5 away, 7 away, and 11 away from 6. So the conjecture is that there can be infinitely many numbers for whom if I add 1, if I add 5, if I add 7, and if I add 11, there will be primes. And this is just an example with 6. But this can be as long as you want. I can find the entire sequence of prime numbers from, let's say, 100 to 1000 and look at the exact distribution. There's 1 more than 100, 3 more than 100, and all the way. And it is guaranteed that there will be another such sequence in the entire totality of things where starting from a number, I will have the same distribution of numbers. So that can be used here because I can fill the grid in similar ways. So I will have the exact same music, the exact same cycle, and the exact same patterns, but with different numbers. Because instead of starting with 6, I started with, let's say, a number like 96, because 96 plus 1 is prime, 96 plus 5 is prime, 96 plus 7 is prime, and 96 plus 11 is prime. So it follows the same sequence of events like from the number 6. So all of those conjectures can be tried. Then you can vary the rules to make them make it work based on twin prime conjectures. You say that a state gets excited only if it is surrounded by twin primes. I mean, this sort of incredible the conjectures in number theory can be quickly put into this grid. You can also study what type of cycle will have the lowest number of excited states. For example, can I have a cycle in which there is only one element which is excited somewhere in the middle, right? Or can I have a cycle in which there are many elements excited? So all of this can be studied, and you just correlate some of the known conjectures on primes. So I would like to finish whatever I wanted to show by also showing how this can be used to study the global pandemic which is currently happening. Although I hate to do that, but there is something that can be done here. So I'll just show you. I don't know if I exactly remember the number, but I think this is what it is. Let me just see. Okay, so I will pick the exact number, guys. Just hold on for a second. So you can ask me questions at that time, and I want to show you a mathematical model on the game of primes on how a pandemic can spread and what exactly happens. So I'm just trying to find the exact box for which it works. Okay, I've gotten it. So is there any question? Does anybody want to ask me any question? So while I arrange this grid here, please ask me any questions. So just type your questions there and I will answer them. Vinay sir, how much time do we have?
We have about 30 minutes.
Oh, 30 minutes. Oh, okay. I thought total is going to be 1 hour. Okay. So maybe we can go slightly longer so I can take the questions. I think a lot of people are saying a lot of things. and there are 150 messages, and I want to see what they are.
So I'll just say some quick things. One of
Sure.
them said that he has a conjecture. Would you
Okay.
like to listen to that?
Okay. Yes. So just a second. I want to show this. Okay. So then we can listen to the conjecture. So guys, this is how. Okay. So now this is how everything is in the beginning. I'll turn off the music. And imagine that this is a population in which somebody is getting infected with a deadly virus. When you start off, it's just one person here who is having the virus. And let us say that this is spreading. And when I go to the next state, so this is now a special type of grid design, because you can notice that the numbers are starting with 2 and they're incremented by 2309, because I want a lot of primes, right? I want to show you how the disease is spreading. So I picked up, this is 2309 is just some prime numbers multiplied and subtracted 1, because it gives me a very high chance that none of the numbers is going to be divisible by those primes at least. So you will not have a multiple of 3 or 5 or anything here. It just could be some larger prime. And it has 14 rows and 14 columns. So I go to the next state. This is what happens. Go to the next state. This is what happens. Watch this. It started off with just one dot. No one else got excited, which means there are so few prime numbers in this entire grid. No number got excited except for that one number somewhere in the corner. But just because of that one number, it is possible that eventually the entire grid is now filled with numbers. And now we go into this never-ending pattern of cycles. It just keeps going, and we don't even reach a cycle. This is too big a box for us to see a cycle, but basically that's what happens. So it's just one number that can cause damage. Everyone else, nothing is happening over here, and it just spreads from there. You can also notice how the surface area increases. This shape, which is covering the excited states, is just getting larger. Now it's a 4x4 box. Now it's almost a 6x5, and it just keeps getting larger and larger until it hits the corner, and then it can't get any larger than that. Yes, so let us hear what conjecture is it. Manu. So maybe
Yes,
I have
Manu.
to unmute him.
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So while you were showing the 50 by 50 grid, I
Uh-huh.
looked at the number of excited states and found that the mean was about 1250, which is half of 50 squared, and about 70% of the numbers seem to be between 1200 to 1300, around that much. So the standard deviation was about 50. So my conjecture is that the standard deviation will be the length of the square,
Okay.
and the mean will be half of the number of total states. Doesn't apply to the first two, because the first two will be less.
Sure. So do you want, we look at a normal grid, which is starting with 1 and it is having an increment of 1. So this is how the grid is going to look like. So he said that the number of excited states, this column here, this particular box here, please everybody notice that. He's saying that the mean of the number of excited states is going to be somewhere near half of the total number. He's saying it's somewhere near about 1250. So let's observe that.
It doesn't
Okay,
work for the first few numbers.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, now it's
now let's watch. So what's happening is that there is one excited state which is going above 1250, and there's one which is going below 1250. One which is going above, one which is going below. Let's slow down and let's watch. So this is more than 1250, less than 1250. More than 1250, less than 1250. More than 1250, less than 1250. So you can never have a continuous increase or a decrease, because every turn somebody will become dormant and somebody will become excited. But it's very interesting to notice that that deviation is happening exactly at the center. That is the half of the total number of excited states. I think that's a very, very powerful claim that you are making, and I will make a note of this. I did know that they're going to go up and down, but I never thought that it's going to be about the half of the number.
And I also predicted that if you make a graph of it, it'll look somewhat similar, like to how many times each of these occurs, it'll look somewhat similar to the bell curve.
Okay.
and the standard deviation will be about like 50 or 100.
Okay. Sure. That's something that's a very good observation. Although we can never predict exactly how many states will be excited, we can always predict what will be the average of all of them, or will they ever go larger than something, or will they ever go smaller than something. Let's
They
say now
will
everything is going
probably go really large, like in rare scenarios.
okay. Because if the larger they go in the next state, the smaller they get. So that's kind of
Yeah.
directly linked. Because if you have too many numbers that are excited, then in the next state, eventually most of them will go away. But how big can that deviation be?
I think it's either 50 or 100, but it seemed like
Okay.
50 to me right now.
Okay. Very interesting. Could we get the software? Then we could observe more results. Sure. That will happen. I cannot make a commitment, but I was going to do work over that in my summer, and my summer is starting today, so it could happen technically from today till 3 months from now. But I think it will not be more than 1 month, because I just want to verify some other conjectures. I couldn't share with you all of them, but there are about 10 or 15 conjectures that I have, and I just wanted to make sure all of them are verified before I put them out in the open, because somebody can rip me apart by saying, hey, you said this is going to work, this is not working, hey, this is a glitch, and I didn't want that to happen. On the Play Store and as well as the App Store. So let's see. So I don't want to make commitment, but any other question,
if I may?
Yes, sure, sir.
Because this is something that some of them asked, that where do you get this particular thing? So you made this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe you just want to say that you made this. It's not available anywhere, right?
Oh, okay. So this is completely mine. I mean, this is not available anywhere on the internet. I have to make it public, and then it would be. So it's it's not available as yet, but eventually it will. How much far can we go in this? Okay, so you mean the largest possible grid? Currently, I can go up to about 70 by 70. More than that, I mean, they get too congested, and the computer gets a little slow because it has to keep track of all of that, because it's also counting the cycles, remember. So it gets heated up very quickly, and I don't want to risk anything happening. It's Java. Yeah. So because it's keeping the index, it's keeping track of every single state and remembering how many red and how many white. If you increase the number of boxes, it just makes it a little harder for the computer. And actually, as I speak, in the background, there is a separate code which is running, which is to do with some other conjecture of mine, which is nothing to do with Game of Primes. So sometimes the computer can get tired if it's doing too many things at the same time. The second conjecture, do you mean every cycle is going to be even length? Is it possible that, okay, thank you so much for asking me that question. Okay, look at this. Yes, okay, thank you. In fact, I actually wanted to show that, and I forgot about it when I spoke about the music part. Somebody asked, can everybody get excited? So watch this. Let's look at a 4x4. Can you please turn off your video, everybody? Okay. So let's look at this. Watch. This is not getting completely excited. There is one box empty here. But if I just increase this increment to 2, meaning I only fill it with odd numbers, watch what happens now. Everyone is excited. I just changed the increment because I wanted the frequency of prime numbers to be more, because now you can see I have 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, and 31. So I have about, 10 primes here? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9, yeah, 10 primes. But if I had the normal grid, just the normal ones, I didn't have so many primes. That's why it was not really reaching that sort of a grid. There was this one guy who was left out. See that 16 over there? And remember, guys, do you remember the third rule that I said, that if a number is excited and none of its neighbors are excited or primes, it goes back to becoming dormant. So look at 16 here. It has 3 neighbors, 9, 10, and 15. None of them are excited. None of them are prime. So in the next day, 16 is lonely and it has to go back. But if I do the other grid here, everybody gets excited. And if I go to the next state, it quickly leads me into this sort of a beautiful cycle. In fact, okay, look at this one. Just look at this one, guys. This is one of the most beautiful patterns. Every state, every day is going to be in symmetry. Watch this. And now we are in a cycle. But these are like this, the Sri Chakra, the Rangoli, that type of a pattern. Because see, it started off with just one in the middle. And let me tell you why this is happening. Because I have a set of 4 primes here. This is similar to 101, 103, 107, 109, or 5, 7, 11, 13. That's sort of, twin primes separated by 4. So I have 307, 311, 313, 317. Not exactly twin primes, but they're closely together. So because of that, it leads to this, outward, inward sort of pattern. And nowhere we lose symmetry. So this is a very interesting type of grid to study on. Yes, I understood. So the standard deviation will not work for smaller grids because there are too few elements for you to work with. The deviation is going to be very large. You'll suddenly have every excited and very few excited. But when the grid is really large, like when it's let's say 1 million by million, theoretically speaking, you will not have such big differences. They'll all be moving very closely, somewhere near 500,000, 450,000, somewhere there. Okay. And let's just, for the sake of it, let's listen what is the music of this particular grid, because there is symmetry. I feel that it could really sound good. Okay. Okay.
Few of them have raised hands. Do you want to take those?
Sure. So let me take question. I'll take one from Imran, and let me take one from Vishak Vikrant. Yeah.
Vishak Vikrant's question.
Yeah. So hi Imran. Yeah. Is not audible yet. Just a second.
Hello?
Yes, hi, I can hear you.
So I made a prime number divisibility criteria.
Okay.
Okay, so take any prime number.
Okay.
Just tell me a prime number.
97.
1 second. Sorry, just 1 second. Huh? Imran, is it a question or is it something that you want to share related to your discovery?
Yes, I just wanted to share something.
Okay.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Maybe we can look at Vishak question and then we'll come back to this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Imran, just 1 second. Imran, we'll take just questions related to Raghavendra's session and other things we won't be able to take now.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yes, Vishak. Vishak, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I would like to make a point about Manu's conjecture. What we could say is we could ignore all the observation that we get before it reaches the loop and just take the observations in the loop and then calculate the mean, because as it tends to infinity, we can just ignore all the stuff. Only the ones in the loop will matter.
Yes. Yes. We can say that it's a converging sequence. Ultimately, the starting doesn't really matter. It eventually reaches a state where that's all that matters, and the identity of a particular grid is going to be decided by the cycle, the length of the cycle, the elements in the cycle, the amount of time it takes, and it doesn't really matter what happens in the beginning because that's all noise. It just quickly goes away. The patterns start happening, but some grids Even a small one like a 15 by 15 or a 20 by 20, you don't find cycles at like 25,000 states. So I run them for the whole night, and the next day morning I still haven't found a cycle. So remember, the number of possible permutations actually are 2 to the power n squared. So that's a lot. When you're doing a 10 by 10 grid, there are 2 to the 100 that are possible. And although, I mean, we know intuitively that the patterns will not go that far and wide, but it doesn't have to happen very soon. It will usually take time. Okay.
We have 10 more minutes, so take questions, and if there is anything that you want to say in specific, reserve your time in those 10 minutes.
Sure, sir. Yeah, I have showed whatever I wanted to show. So whatever agenda I had, I would love to answer questions. There are a lot of them, but I think I can only take about 3 more. Yeah. Okay, I will. Let's see. Let's look at Ashwath. Ashwath wanted to ask something, is it? I think he raised his hand.
No.
No? Okay.
No.
There is Neelam. Okay.
Neelam?
Yeah. Hi, Neelam. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you tell me the general formula for asking the question? Means finding the pattern, when will it repeat? Is there some general formula?
General formula for finding the pattern and then will it repeat? Okay.
Yeah.
So I have run enough trials so far, and I've realized that there is no proper increase or decrease in the number of steps it takes to reach a cycle. Like for example, just because 10 takes very long, it doesn't mean 11 will take longer. It could be shorter, and then 12 will be longer. Okay. So one of my conjectures is that if you draw a graph and you see how many steps it takes for the number of states required to reach a cycle, it will never be an increasing graph or a decreasing graph. It will just keep going up and down. You will never be able to find a pattern where every state is going to be, every grid is going to have more and more states to reach a cycle, or every grid is lower and lower. It just keeps going up and down. It's completely dependent on the prime number distribution. It's nothing to do with the size of the grid. Even a large grid, you can have a very small cycle.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. My pleasure. Yes. There is Ritav. Yes, let's take Ritav. Sorry if I'm addressing you by your names. I'm just reading whatever is written there.
Ritav, can you unmute yourself, Ritav? Okay, looks like some issue at his end.
Okay. Abhimanyu, batch A. We can try him. Yeah.
Yes, Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu, I have put you on unmute. Looks like some. Yes. Go ahead, Abhimanyu.
Sir, I had a doubt.
Sure.
So what if that whole grid in the game of primes, what if it's fully filled with even numbers other than 2?
Can you tell me what will happen?
I think there will apparently be no change.
Yes. So the game will never start. So, I forgot to tell you. In the game of life by Conway, you just have to play one move. You start the game. You just randomly put some black dots. In this game, you don't even have to start the game. I mean, you just decide the grid. So you decide the playground. You don't even decide who is playing what. You just decide the playground. The numbers themselves will play based on your playground. So the only thing you should design is the increment and the size of the grid and the starting number. These are the 3 things in your control. And that's not technically starting the game. You just decide the interface, basically. And then the game will do whatever it wants to. So if you fill everything with even numbers, the game will never start. So that's the stalemate. So one of the other conjectures is, what sort of a stalemate can I reach other than the trivial ones? The trivial ones are where everything is even, or if there's only dice or something like that. Can there be another stalemate where I start a game and it keeps going and finally it reaches a situation from which it cannot go ahead? Meaning no one dies, no one lives, and it stays like that. So such a grid can be created hypothetically, but we don't know if such a grid will come through these rules. Like I could design such that all the four corners are excited and they have two neighbors around them who are all excited and they stay like that forever. But we don't know if such a grid will ever exist, right? So yeah, there can be a 2x2 stalemate, which is a trivial stalemate. So I'll just show that here. So this is another example of a trivial stalemate where I start with a 2x2 grid and I start with the number 2. Okay. So now what happens is first 4 gets excited and then everybody gets excited and they stay like that forever. No one dies because everyone has only 3 neighbors. So no one is having the ability to make another guy dormant, and it's a stalemate. But these are trivial examples. I want to know if such stalemates can exist in bigger boxes. So yeah, thank you for that question. That's a very good question. Okay, we'll take last one question and then we'll be done for today. And I would like to take Sudhansh. Yeah.
Yes, Sudhansh.
Is it possible that hold on, I had written the question down in the chat, but then I forgot what I was going to ask. Hold on.
You want to look at the question until then we can quickly take another one maybe.
Okay, sir.
So somebody asked my email, so I've just given it there. So yeah, we can take one last question. I don't know, but then we might not have time for your question. Yeah, we'll just take
Vijay.
one last question.
Vijay.
Sure.
Vijay.
Yes, sir. Hello.
Yes.
Sir, I was thinking if you made music from those grids, right? Example, like when you made those grids symmetrically, that pattern, you had a beautiful music, right? So why don't you try getting some kind of symmetrical patterns from beautiful music? Why don't you try do the reverse?
Oh, okay. Well, that's very
Then
interesting.
maybe.
But I don't have control over the, like for example, let's say I want to create a music in which there is 6, 5, 4, 3, but I don't have control over how the numbers have to be arranged, because then I can make them random, meaning there's no proper increment. I just place some numbers the way I want to, just to get the music, but then there will not be the continuity. I don't know. I think that's a good one. It might be possible to do it the other way around. Maybe it's possible to design a grid in such a way that it will have music in a certain way. It might be completely possible.
So then maybe we may be able to explain why some music are more beautiful like than the other.
Completely agreed. Yeah, some of the classical compositions, why they last longer. Maybe there's a sequence of notes that are used that makes it evergreen. Okay, so I think this is a very good place to stop. I'm sorry, I would have loved to answer more, but I think we discussed a lot, and I hope all of you have a lot of things to think about. I'm genuinely grateful to Raising a Mathematician training program for giving me this opportunity. I love to do this. I just finished my exams today, so this was the best celebration that I could have for my semester. So it's great to interact with all you guys, and yeah, I hope there is something that you learned new, and I hope to see you all in the years to come. Jai Hind. Thank you so much. Hari Om.
Thank you, Raghavendra. Thank you so much. I'll ask Adityan to give an official vote of thanks. But before that, I just wanted to ask a couple of things. One is, while they were listening to these, this particular session, I'm sure a lot of them would have got some new ideas, and some of them were saying, I got some new conjectures and things like that. So can you tell when exactly are you calling something as a conjecture? Is it when you get a gut feeling, or after you have tried it? Because a lot of us feel that when we see something, immediately we call it as a conjecture. So when is the state that we can actually call it as a conjecture, or when is the state when that you call it as a conjecture?
Okay, there is a application process for my ideas to become a conjecture. So first they're an idea. I don't discuss it with anybody. Then I think about it for some time. Then I would discuss it with a friend or maybe my professor here. And once I feel for a long time that, oh, okay, this thing seems to be working, then I write a code. And then I run the code for about 2 days, and I try for numbers all the way up to, let's say, 1 billion or 1 trillion or how much ever the code can do it. And if I still notice that everything is still the way I thought it should be, then I write it down in a list of, in a file where I've listed all my conjectures. I put it there. Otherwise, it never reaches that stage. Otherwise, it will just be a trial and error thing, and then I forget about it, and I just keep that idea, meaning, okay, so that was this idea, it's not working completely, maybe I can modify it a little bit. So there's a difference between an idea and a conjecture. A conjecture is something which you are sure is working, the only thing is you don't know how to prove it, then it's a conjecture. But if it's just something that you feel is a good thing, it might work, then it's safe to call it an idea, I think. Because even when I was young, I would call everything as a conjecture. In fact, the first thing I said I have 25 conjectures. Now when I look at them, I only feel about 10 of them were very interesting. The other 15 are looking very trivial now. So maybe even the conjectures that I have now, next year it might look trivial. So I don't know. But yeah, unless you try it out for a large sample set, I don't think you can call it a conjecture. Yes, sir.
And coding is a good way to try out
Coding
your
is-
ideas,
yes,
right?
definitely.
And what is the, somebody, quite a few of them were asking, what is the programming language that you use?
I use Python for my conjecture coding, but this was done by my father. He used Java. I don't know if that's so easy to do because he is a very good programmer himself. But for my conjectures, I just use the simple Python language. There's nothing too fancy about it, just some simple loops and some algorithms. It's just a way of making the computer understand that it has to try this for a given number, try to make it a little efficient so that it can try a lot, and then it runs. Yeah, so I took a course last semester on Python, so it helped me a lot. Before that, there was a little bit of basic things that I was using, but now, yeah, it's a little better now. Hopefully, I will learn more advanced things next semester.
And if these guys have any comments or any new ideas, new questions, new conjectures related to this, can they email it to you?
Definitely, I would love to have a lot of emails, no problem. And I've given my university email ID, so that's usually safe. There's not a lot of junk there, so I'll get it. And I will try to respond, but please forgive me if I don't respond very soon. I will think about it and then I will respond. But I suggest one thing, guys. If you want to email me, I don't mind, but I suggest that for at least 2 or 3 days you think about it yourself and you do something, you play with it, because straight away you want to email me something and then tomorrow you realize, oh no, it's not really something worth talking about. So think about it for some time, and when you genuinely feel that, oh okay, this is definitely a doubt or this is definitely a conjecture, then you write to me. So then we can definitely have some discussions rather than clarifications.
A last quick thing, can you tell your relationship with primes from your childhood, your personal experience, and we can end on that note.
Sure. Okay. So
start from the day when you were born.
I was born on March the 13th, 1999 at 3:47 p.m. in house number 37, and I was the 7th member of the family. And I finished writing my first set of conjectures on 7th of January at 8:29 p.m. So the date, the time, the year, all of these are related to primes. I mean, guys, this is just some coincidence. Don't really think this is some big thing. It's just random. You can find a lot of people who are born on the same date that I was born. And I'm sure in the same hospital, there were 3 other guys who were born. So it's nothing to do with me interested in prime. It's just a nice coincidence to have. Like, for example, some people are born on 31st of June and things like that.
And somebody just figured out that there are 11 letters in your name.
Okay. Those are all, when I was young, those things looked fancy, but now they're all, no, there's nothing to do with research. You have to have ideas only. Just because you're born on some date, you'll not come up with ideas.
That there is no date as 0. Okay. So I'll just unmute Adityan to officially thank you for this particular
thank you so much, sir. Thank you
session.
So much.
Adityan.
Thank you, sir, for this opportunity to to thank Raghav for this session. Thank you very much, Raghav, for this wonderful lecture. How better do you pay a tribute to a legendary mathematician than by creating a piece extending his work, right? So I don't think I will have to point out how inspiring Raghav is. He has inspired quite a lot of students to explore math through his lectures in the past, and I'm pretty sure today was no exception. And I'm pretty sure he will continue doing this in the future as well. No, I do not know anyone who is as passionate as Raghav is, and his passion is something that I always look at and I will look up to.
Same here, Adityan. Thank you.
A small incident about Raghav. So he had given a lecture in the previous edition of RAM TP as well. And any guesses
about the references he used to structure his lecture.
You
He
mean
had
the number
used
of references?
no, his like the materials from which he started drawing his results which he shared in the lecture. And all the results which he shared in the lecture were his own conjectures and results he had obtained from his never-ending explorations. I do not think there are a lot of people who can give lectures based on their own works even before beginning formal university education. Now I'm very glad that I could attend your talk today, and once again thank you very much for giving this wonderful lecture, Raghav. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, sir.
Can we have everybody just start their video, and then we can
Oh, okay.
give a
I
hi
want to see
or
everyone.
do a
I
thank
wonder
you.
how many of these guys were there in the last Ram TP. So for those
Quite
of
a
you who were
few.
there last Ram TP, you might remember there was a professor called Bruce Burnt who gave a lecture. He's the professor at the same university where I'm studying, and I met him a couple of times very recently. And it was so unbelievable for me because last May I was in Mumbai listening to his lecture, and now I was actually in his office talking. And now for the same Ram TP, I am able to talk from here. It's just like such a complete circle. So he's also born on March 13th, by the way. So Bruce Burnt is born on March 13th. Yes. He retired very recently. So
So you could see everybody, right?
oh yeah, I recognize a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, there's Sriram Nair. Okay.
Oh, he's a volunteer.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, Raghav.
Thank
so
you, sir.
We'll take a pause here. Thank you so much once again.
No problem. My pleasure. Always my pleasure. Thank you, sir.
For doing this session, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Good day, guys. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Shall I end the meeting?
Yes.
Okay.